Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Karen Stegenja. I'm a volunteer with Oakwood Creative Care, and I've been a Dementia Friends champion for a few years. So I've done just a handful of the Dementia Friends sessions, which is what we're going to do today. I am a volunteer, so I completed a training, as I said, to be a champion. I'm not an expert in dementia. So if you have questions, I can't give advice, but I can give you some resources as to where you might be able to find that information. I don't know how, I was going to open up the chat room for you to put comments or questions, but I can't seem to figure out how to share my screen and see the chat room at the same time. So we can, if you want to put something in the chat room, somebody's going to have to let me know that it's in there.
I got you, Karen. I'll take care of it.
I consider it a success that I'm even on the line.
I'll pass along any comments from the chat room for you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to start with this, and I am also part of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce Aging and Healthcare Committee, which is the folks that have launched the Dementia Friendly movement in Mesa. We were recently designated as a Dementia Friendly city. There is a proclamation that the mayor has put together and has announced that at the council meeting. So we are a dementia friendly city, and this is a portion of what we're going to do for the community and businesses and so forth, as well as we'll have the city hopefully take care of some issues as well, transportation and those kinds of things that go along with the dementia friendly city. So these are the numbers. This is why we need to talk about dementia and get people involved in understanding it and kind of, trying to eliminate the stigma that's associated with it. So you can see almost 6 million Americans have Alzheimer's disease. The number used to be, one every so many seconds was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. The numbers are just staggering when you talk about, you can see the increase, almost 43%. By 2025. We happen to be in the fastest growing state for Alzheimer's. We've got about 140,000 Arizonans, and those are the ones that have been diagnosed. There may be many more out in the community that have just not have had that diagnosis yet. So according to the Alzheimer's Association, about 10% of persons over the age of 60 have dementia, and about half of those 85 and older have dementia. And I was asked one time, why does it seem to be growing so much? And actually the answer is people are living longer. And so as the percentages increase, we have more folks that have been diagnosed simply because people are living to be 90 and 100 and so forth. So the cases are going to increase. And if anybody has questions along the way, you can please interrupt, raise your hand. I can see only a couple of you, so I'll let Bob monitor that as well. So when you think about dementia, what is one word that comes to mind when you hear the word dementia? You can either verbalize or put it in the chat room, but what do you think about when you hear that?
Disoriented.
Disoriented. Okay.
Confusion.
Confusion.
Forgetful.
Forgetful.
We got a comment of loss of self in the chat room.
Loss of self. Ah, that's a nice way to put that. Yes. And when the confusion, loss of self, memory, disoriented, none of those are positive. So obviously we see it as something that is negative that happens to somebody, which is, it does take the self away. The caregivers have to adjust to living with a new person, and the person with dementia may become a different person as well. So it does make changes in the dynamics of the person's life as well as their relationships. So backing up just a second, what is Dementia Friends? It was developed in the United Kingdom, which, I used to do work on elder abuse for the Mesa Police Department when I worked for them. And a lot of the elder programs seem to come out of the United Kingdom first, and then they make their way across the pond, as they say. So it's in the United States. It started in the Midwest, and as it has progressed, we have many states now that are involved, many cities and communities that have become dementia friendly, as Mesa has. Tempe was the first in Arizona in 2016 to become a dementia friendly city. Mayor Mitchell was very much involved in that. His mother suffered from dementia, so he and his dad, Harry Mitchell, were very much involved in that movement, as was Banner. So Banner and the city of Tempe have done an excellent job of bringing Dementia Friends to Arizona. Since Tempe has been designated, we also have Surprise was designated earlier this year, Scottsdale, Phoenix, and now Mesa. And there are other communities that are working on it. And the Dementia Friends USA is the one that sends out the criteria and what needs to be done. So we've met all that criteria. So we're trying to help the community understand what dementia is, how it affects people, and how can we, as the city of Mesa, whether it's businesses or residents, how can we make a difference in the lives of people with dementia? Because that's really, this is all about supporting, understanding and supporting them. So types of dementia. Dementia is not a specific disease. It's an overall term that describes a wide range of symptoms, some of which you've mentioned, decline in memory or other thinking skills, severe enough to reduce a person's ability to perform everyday activities. So that's what we look at. Alzheimer's disease, as you can see, is the most common type. It accounts for 60 to 80% of cases. And then you have less common Lewy body, which is the second most prevalent. That goes along with the Parkinson's dementia as well, frontal temporal and vascular dementia. So there are some other types of dementia, but we don't usually ask that. Usually when someone says they have dementia, we assume it's Alzheimer's. Contrary to when someone says they have cancer, oftentimes we ask what type of cancer, because a different understanding. And with dementia and Alzheimer's and Lewy body, they present differently. Unfortunately, a friend of mine has been diagnosed with the frontal temporal, and with that type of dementia, they kind of lose their social filter. And so these are the folks that may say things that are inappropriate, have conversation, just come out with something that there's no filter to say, oh, that's not appropriate in this situation. As with law enforcement, they might see people shoplifting, they might see someone exposing themselves because they've lost that ability to understand. Lewy body is, you might remember Robin Williams, the comedian. That's the type of dementia that he was diagnosed with. Goes along with the Parkinson's. So sometimes they have hallucinations or sleep disorders or mood changes. So we have to be aware that just because someone says they have dementia, we might be looking at different behaviors for different people. So what our goal is with Dementia Friends is to kind of understand dementia and reduce the stigma that goes along with the diagnosis. So most people know that they experience physical changes as they age. And as I read this, I'm just thinking that my picture must be in the definition here. They may now wear glasses, have graying hair, and feel stiff when they get up in the morning. So my picture is right there next to that. We also experience cognitive or thinking changes as we age. May not remember names as easily as we used to, or have more trouble concentrating in busy settings. So we're going to talk about what is normal versus what may be an early sign of dementia. So the first one you can see there, sometimes forgetting names or appointments, and the key here is remembering them later. And that's what the difference is between the normal, for the most part, and the signs and symptoms is they can't remember it later. If you've, who was that actress or that actor in that movie, or I have an appointment like we were talking about today, thank goodness for reminders, but you do remember it later. Whereas people that have a dementia, may not remember. One of the most common signs, as we talked about, is memory loss, especially forgetting recently learned information. As Jan Doherty with Banner says, they've lost their save button on their computer, which means that anything that comes in today is not going to be remembered. That's why you often hear stories that they remember the past, but they can't remember that they had lunch 5 minutes ago or that they met you 10 minutes ago. So that's what the difference is. They ask for the same information over and over again. They might rely on memory aids. We have found that some of them are very savvy at having a calendar posted so they remember what day it is, and just something to help them along so that, first of all, so other people may not know that they have the dementia, but also to help them through the day. So that's the difference there. Second sign is challenges in planning or solving problems. Some people may experience changes in their ability to develop and follow a plan or work with numbers, such as balancing a checkbook, following a recipe that they've been making for years and now they can't follow that recipe, or keeping track of monthly bills. I had read that financial challenges or challenges in financial planning and checkbook and numbers is one of the early signs of dementias when they start having problems with that. They may have difficulty concentrating and take longer to do things than they did before. If you occasionally make an error, balancing a checkbook, if anybody does that anymore, again, that's normal aging that we talk about. The third one is difficulty completing familiar tasks at home, at work, or at leisure. Sometimes people have trouble driving to a familiar location, managing a budget, or remembering the rules of a favorite game. So again, it goes back to something that they've done for years, and now they're having trouble recalling those tasks and those steps in the plan. And I think this might have been written when people were still trying to set the timer on the VCR. Some talk about recording a TV show or use the settings on a microwave. That might be just someone that's not familiar with technology that just needs some assistance. But if they've been doing tasks for all their life and now they're having trouble, that's an early sign. Confused about the day of the week or time and place. They can lose track of dates, although with COVID, I'm finding I do that as well. Seasons and the passage of time. So they may not understand if you say, I'll be back in an hour, or what time was my doctor's appointment? It's not till 2:30, or it's not for 2 hours. They can't make that connection between what is 2 hours. And so they may ask you again right afterwards. So there's a confusion with the time and the passage of time. If it's not happening immediately, they may have trouble understanding something in the future, or they may forget where they are or forget how they got there. And that's what we run into, maybe the person that has wandered away from home and it becomes a situation that has to be addressed immediately because they don't remember where they are, where they've been, where they've driven to. And again, normal aging, we're able to recall that later on. So again, that's the difference between the two. Some of this seems a little repetitive, but I'm going with the script here. So the fifth sign is understanding visual images and spatial relations. And this also comes into play with driving because they don't have depth perception, or they can't judge distance, or the left turn is somebody coming too fast and they make the left turn anyway. So driving becomes a real issue, or even color or contrast, reading, all of that, not only driving, but also reading the newspaper, reading a book. They're going to have trouble now doing something that they've done for years. We all have vision changes, maybe cataracts, or, got the glasses on. I didn't have to wear those 10 years ago. So we all go through that, and that's normal. but they're going to have problems actually with images and spatial relations, not quite understanding. The friend of mine that I mentioned that has frontal temporal, she doesn't recognize people that she's worked with for years and years and years. She can't make the connection between their face, their image, and somebody that she's known for 20 or 30 years that she's worked with. So does anybody have any questions up to this point? We're gonna, I think I mentioned this is gonna be about an hour, so I just wanna make sure we get through all of this. Next slide, okay. The sixth sign is new problems with words in speaking or writing. And I've dealt with a dear gentleman that was in one of my support groups. He has since passed away. He always wanted to, you know, we'd ask questions, we talk about their past, where they were from and so forth. And I knew he wanted to have that conversation and he wanted to add to the conversation with the group. But when he started having problem finding his words and putting together a sentence, it led to him shutting down because he got so frustrated trying to have conversation. And of course that leads to isolation and some issues and so forth. So they have trouble following or joining a conversation. They may stop in the middle of the conversation and have no idea how to continue what they were saying, or they might repeat themselves frequently, which is what you'll hear from care partners quite a bit, is they just keep asking me the same thing over and over again, or he just keeps saying the same thing over and over. They may struggle with vocabulary, have problems finding the right word, or call things by the wrong name, excuse me. Like calling a watch a hand clock, or saying it's red when it's white, or saying that's a book when it's a radio. They can't make that connection any longer. With normal aging, you know, sometimes we have trouble finding the right word, but it does come to us. So it's much more, I guess, exaggerated with somebody that has some form of dementia. Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace their steps. Again, we go back to that. You lose something, but you can find it. Just like I know I've done that. It's like, where did I put that? And then, okay, I was here, there, and I can kind of retrace where I've been. They cannot do that. When I was with the police department and I was in crime prevention, so my specialty that I took on was the senior population. And we had some older adults that would make theft reports. My purse has been stolen. My niece stole my frozen peas out of my freezer. And so the officer would go there and they would find the purse in the dishwasher, or they would find that, you know, the peas that were somewhere else in the house. So what they've done is they don't remember where they've put these items, or they've put them in a totally inappropriate place, unless the dishwasher is appropriate. Maybe, I'm not judging, but to me, it wouldn't be. So we would get theft reports because they would misplace things and they would accuse others of theft and so forth. So it does get, you know, you kind of trying to be careful not to insult them, and at the same time, try to help them find their item. They can't go over the steps again. And this occurs more frequently. You'll get people that will do that over and over again.
Hey, Karen, we do have a question that just popped in, so I thought I'd throw it out there. It may not be quite the time for it, but I'll throw it out there and let you deal with it. Do you know anyone who has tried nutritional changes for therapy?
I do not. Yeah, that is, well, I will say what I know, which is limited, and you can, you know, look up, maybe get with Banner and so forth, but there are some studies that show, of course, a healthy diet, more fat in the diet, you know, just as far as prevention, where somebody is eating more of the, you know, the fruits and vegetables and all the kind of the typical healthy diet does help with preventing Alzheimer's as much as it can. There is nothing out there that's going to cure Alzheimer's or dementia or entirely prevent it. So there is no magic diet. There is no magic pill out there. And if you do hear things like that, take them with a grain of salt, I guess. But we do things as far as nutrition. At Oakwood, I know when they serve them lunch, they try to give them healthy foods, because you need to feed their brain to try to keep their brain firing like it should. So giving them, there's all sorts of theories about using, high fat butters and so forth to help with the brain. And then, I will say there's all sorts of theories out there. I have not read anything that is definitive that this is actually going to help, but always eating a healthy diet would be recommended. So I apologize for that, not knowing the exact answer to that, but I would go to Banner and see if they're doing any kind of studies on nutritional, because there are a lot of theories out there about it. I hope that answered the question. If not, they can put, no, that was terrible in the chat, and we'll go from there. So again, I'm not a medical expert, so that's kind of out of my realm. Let's see, we talked about misplacing things, decreased or poor judgment. People with Alzheimer's experience changes in judgment or decision-making when dealing with money. This lends itself to fraud and telemarketers as well, because they do get preyed on for the fraud schemes. I just heard this morning there's a fraud going around about contact tracing. People are getting calls and then trying to get people's social security numbers and things like that. And somebody without Alzheimer's may fall for that, as they say, or somebody with Alzheimer's that can't tell the difference between right and wrong may also become victim, and it does happen. It also happens with elder abuse and exploitation. They believe, whether it's family or an outside force, they are taken advantage of because of their Alzheimer's. There was a story once about a gentleman in a music store that sold a woman with Alzheimer's 10 pianos in a year because she did not remember that she had bought one, and he did actually get prosecuted for that. So, which was a good thing, because a lot of times it goes by the wayside. We've seen car dealers that have sold cars to people with dementia that don't even have a valid license. So you have to be very careful, because people do take advantage. So I've seen enough of that. So we all make a bad decision, but we're talking about judgment. Withdrawal from work or social activities, that goes back to what I was talking about with Larry, who was the gentleman I was talking about, that having the inability to carry on a conversation and get frustrated with his thoughts and words. And those that are diagnosed, I don't know how many of you know somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia or suspect. But they do withdraw because they know that they have the disease in the early stages of diagnosis. And so they do what they can to either hide it or, minimize how many people outside their social network know about it. But as it becomes more obvious, where they can't carry on a conversation or they don't remember people's names or faces, they start to withdraw. And isolation, and even during this COVID, it has had an effect on even the members at Oakwood that don't have the social interaction anymore. People aren't out with other people to do artwork or to sit and socialize and have lunch. And so it really worsens the effect of the dementia when they don't have that. But a lot of them will withdraw simply because of a lot of the things we've talked about, the conversation and so forth, or they can't keep up a hobby, or they don't recognize their favorite sports team. And so they just fall out of any activities. And lastly, changes in mood and personality. And this may differ with what type of dementia you've been diagnosed with. I mentioned Lewy body takes on some different behavioral changes, as does frontal temporal dementia. I've had caregivers tell me, my husband never said a swear word until now, and now he's, kind of spouting them out daily, and or the husband has become more aggressive. And it's then the wife, it happens too. I know we've been to, getting back to the law enforcement, I keep bringing that up. I wasn't an officer, I was a civilian, but domestic violence calls with, whether it's the wife accusing the husband of having an affair because their personality has changed, or the husband's more aggressive, or, things, they're more anxious, more fearful, more depressed. Things do change as the dementia progresses. And so they're easily upset. And if they're out of their comfort zone, it becomes an issue. So any questions? Anything in there? Okay.
I did have one question come up for you. A little bit about learning new languages or playing board brain games, if those activities are effective prevention.
There are, I've read articles to that effect, whether it's crossword puzzles or brain games that they have. I think AARP even has some on their website, or Banner. I know that engaging them in meaningful activities, artwork, music, anything to kind of keep the brain firing would be a good, and I've also read, I do crossword puzzles, but they also say you have to mix it up and use different parts of your brain, not just crossword puzzles, but do these kind of puzzles as well to kind of keep your brain active. So I think what I've read is that does have an effect. Now, prevention's a strong word. I would say it helps keep your brain healthier. And as we'll see, the toll that dementia takes. But I think being active, diet, back to the diet, and yeah, I think that I believe, and from what the articles that I've read, there is a movement towards that, where we all need to stay and keep our brains active and stay involved in those kinds of activities. So these are the 5 key messages that we are to get out of today's. Dementia is not a normal part of aging. You are not all guaranteed to get it. Dementia is caused by a disease of the brain. And this is something that goes back to the stigma, because if it's a disease, there shouldn't be anything to be ashamed of. If you have cancer, we don't look differently at somebody that has cancer, or my dad had ALS, or, but when we see somebody with dementia, somehow and this happens with social settings, with people that have been diagnosed, their friends pull away, their family might pull away because conversations become difficult, the memory. And so we do see a different reaction sometimes, but it is a disease, and that's what we have to keep in mind. It's certainly no fault of the person that has the dementia. They can't control what is happening to them. It's not just about memory problems, as we've just discussed. And it is possible to have a good quality of life with dementia. And there's more to the person than the dementia. That's what we have to. Sometimes people get labeled as a patient or, an Alzheimer's sufferer, but there's so much more to that person. That person may have had 60 or 70, 80 years of life, of hobbies, of likes and dislikes and so forth. And now with the dementia, we forget that they were once like us, I guess, at some time, and young, and had a life that we need to respect. So those are the key messages from the Dementia Friends movement. So as we get into, this is the brain, advanced Alzheimer's. As you can see, it versus the healthy brain, it's the disease that damages the brain cells. And this damage interferes with how the brain cells communicate. That's why I say about keeping the neurons firing, whatever the word is. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't play it on TV. So when brain cells can't communicate, your thinking, your behavior, your feelings, everything is affected. So it may affect different parts of the brain as far as what type of dementia you have, but they're all responsible for different functions. So whether it's memory, judgment, or movement, and when they're damaged, obviously the brain can't function efficiently. So this bookcase story that we're going to talk about is kind of a visualization of how Alzheimer's can affect the brain and what we have to keep in mind. So, but everybody's brain is affected differently. So if you've met one person with Alzheimer's, you've met one person with Alzheimer's. Not everybody is going to behave the same. So you kind of take them as they are, just as you would any other individual. So we can imagine that a 70-year-old woman who has dementia, and there's a full bookcase beside her. Each book represents one of her skills or memories. So on the top shelf are her memories of facts and her skills for thinking in complex or complicated ways. For people with dementia, the top shelves or outer part of the brain is damaged first. So when the top or the outer part is damaged, skills like math, language, and keeping one's behavior in check are in that part of the brain. So in the bookcase story, these skills are also books on the top shelf. So that's the part of the brain that's going to control that. When dementia rocks the woman's bookcase, the books on the top shelf begin to fall out. She may not remember what she ate for breakfast, or that she has to pay for items at the drugstore, or that someone came to visit. So the facts and the thinking are on the top shelf, the outer part of the brain, and that is what is going to fall off first. Emotions and feelings are lowered down within the bookcase, just like they are in the lower or inner part of the brain, the instinct area of the brain. Feelings like love, happiness, frustration, and sensing respect are in that part of the brain. So as dementia continues to rock her bookcase, the books on the lower shelves stay for a much longer period of time. So it helps to explain that your skills, thinking, memories, all on the top shelves are what's going to go first, but emotions and feelings remain longer because they are within the brain, not on the top or outer part that's damaged first. So when we talk about somebody with dementia, the daughter may visit her, she can't remember her name, but she will remember feelings of love, comfort, and support that the daughter may give her during that visit. So she may not remember her daughter's name, she may not remember what they talked about, but she'll remember how the daughter made her feel during that visit. So if they were to argue, she might not remember the details, but she'll remember that she was angry and hurt. So that's what happens, kind of like I say, a visual effect. And that's something that we have to keep in mind, because that is still a part of the brain that we can tap into and that we can comfort that person with. Okay. This is usually done in person, but we'll kind of go through this. When you're trying to explain, we talked about planning as a skill that they lose first. And so what we do with this is, if you were to write out a step-by-step instruction list, telling somebody how to brush their teeth. And when I did this, I had over 20 different steps. So we can all kind of contribute to this, because it's a little hard to do with, I think there's 18 or 19 of us on the call. So if you just, what steps, if somebody has dementia and you're trying to instruct them how to brush their teeth, what are some of the steps that would be involved in that? And anybody can kind of chime in as to what would you do first? What would be the first step?
Grab your toothbrush.
Okay.
Get it wet.
Okay.
Put toothpaste on it.
Now you're assuming that they know what a toothbrush is.
Oh. Wow.
They know which tube is toothpaste. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just kind of illustrating just how specific you have to be with somebody. So Anybody else before we kind of go through? Because I don't have a list. I mean, there is no right answer. And you're all going through your head, okay, what do I do?
So there's the suggestion in the chat that you have to think of how you instruct a 2-year-old.
Okay. So how do you do that? I've never had a 2-year-old, so go for it.
Well, you'd get the toothbrush for them.
Okay, there's a start.
You'd get it ready and you could have your own next to yourself and you could like show them that. I don't know.
That's very good. Yeah, that actually has not come up the last few times I've done this class, but that's a great to illustrate, to show them what has to be done.
The problem is you'd probably have to show them every day, right?
Yes, you would. And 5 minutes later after you've just completed.
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah, it's not something they're going to learn. It's something they
Right.
have to do each time. So you have to, first of all, take them into the appropriate room. So you take them into the bathroom, I'm assuming. And right, showing them the toothbrush. What is a toothbrush? Making sure they have a toothbrush, manual or electric, and whatever you're using. Which tube is the toothpaste? How much toothpaste do they put on there without squeezing that tube and just having it all over the place, like a 2-year-old would probably do because it's so much fun. And then do you wet it? And then what do you do with that toothbrush?
Chew on it. Just kidding.
Plug it in, push the button and hold it there.
Right.
Yeah, it's, and so how to move the toothbrush. And you're right, you have to stand there and go through every single task. And then what do you do with all that stuff in your mouth? Do you spit it out? Do you rinse? Do you know, all the tasks that we take for granted. And I've done this with making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich as well. Someone says, well, you get the peanut butter out, you put it on the bread. It's like, okay, do they know where to get the peanut butter? Do they know what side of the bread it goes on? Does the peanut butter and jelly go on one piece of bread? Where's the knife? Are you going to let them use a knife? And so many different things that you have to think about when you're leaving somebody with dementia by themselves. You know, it's so much easier to just make the sandwich yourself and say, here's your sandwich. But if we're trying to instruct them, we have to think every little step and maybe what are we missing that we take for granted. We have to break it down into an easy task for us that seems very complex for them if you've got 20 different steps, because they might get through the first couple of steps and then totally forget what they've just done and why they're even in the bathroom to brush their teeth. So that's kind of the support that's needed from our caregivers, you know, just for a simple task. And this is only one thing that they have to do with them during the day. They make meals, the remote for the TV, toileting, so many different things that somebody with dementia is not going to know. And you know, whoever said you have to show it to them again later. Exactly. If you brush your teeth twice a day, you're going to be back in there again. Or every day it's going to be the same because they don't have that save button to remember what to do. Some of it might come back to them naturally because they have been doing it, but you still have to monitor and make sure. And there's probably some medical devices and different things. I know there are with shampoos and, you know, trying to get someone to, sometimes with dementia, people, they don't shower anymore. Either they don't think of it or they don't like it. They don't like the water on their bodies anymore. So the medical field has had to come up with dry shampoos or ways to clean somebody without putting them in the shower, you know, those kinds of things. So as the disease progresses, you have to kind of make accommodations for things that they're struggling with. So communicating with somebody with dementia becomes very important, and there's a couple of the big ones on here. First of all, treat the person with dignity and respect. I think the fact that you're all on this call is something that you respect these folks, whether you work with them or you have family members or friends. treating them because they have a disease. So you have to treat them with dignity and respect. Be aware of your feelings. Your feelings and your body language go a long way in comforting somebody with dementia. As I said, with the bookcase, if they have an argument, that person remembers the anger and the hurt, even though they don't remember what they argued about. So if you're coming in and you're grumpy or having a bad day, they're going to sense that. Whereas if you come in with a smile, whether you're faking it or not, they're going to be more uplifted. So be very aware of your feelings and your body language with folks with dementia. Be patient and supportive. And patience can be, you ask a question, and you wait, and there's a 20-second pause. We're not used to that. We're used to conversation kind of flowing and being, you talk, I talk, you talk, but you may ask them a question and it may take them 15, 20 seconds to process and figure out what you want them to do. So patience, comes into play quite a bit. Comfort, reassurance. We talked about the emotions being so important. Avoid criticizing or correcting and arguing. I will tell you right now, you can never win an argument with somebody with dementia because their world is their world. And that's the world that you have to go into. That's the world that you have to enter, because they are not going to, whether they're saying something, well, I drove to the store yesterday, why can't I go today? You didn't go anywhere yesterday. You don't even, that doesn't help, because in their world, I drove to the store yesterday. What are you telling me? And so there's just no way around that. I've been to some classes on improv for caretakers, care partners of people with dementia, where you have to improvise. Well, I drove to the store yesterday. Well, yeah, you did, but today the car's in the shop, so we can't let you drive to the store. You just have to kind of be, think on your feet and kind of come up with something, because criticizing or that word in there, well, but that's, kind of arguing. And so just go along with it and make up something. They call it therapeutic fibbing at Banner. It's not quite lying, but it's avoiding confrontation, basically, is what you're trying to do. Offer a word guess. Is this what you're trying to say? When they're struggling to find that word or carry on that conversation, you can help them, whether it's nonverbal, where you're writing it down, or like somebody said, you brush your teeth right next to them and show them how to do it so they can kind of mimic what you're doing. So nonverbal communication, showing them pictures or writing things down or offering a word guess without totally, getting in their face. Is this what you're trying to think of? Again, be aware of your feelings when you're communicating in them, because they will take on those feelings themselves if you're argumentative, or they can kind of read your mood. When you're approaching them, always come from the front. Don't scare them. Sometimes when you come from the back, keep good eye contact. Get down to their level if they're in a wheelchair, which a lot of you probably do if you're dealing with any, older adult with impairments. Down to call them by their preferred name. They may not, just as a side note, we always told the officers that make sure you know what name they go by, because they may not go by Mrs. Stegenja or Mrs. Harrison anymore because they don't remember they were married. So they may take on their maiden name, and they may go by Smith now. And so you have to kind of know, again, entering their world, what world are they in? What era are they in? What age are they in? And communicate with them along those lines. It goes a long way to understand the person and exactly where they are in their disease and in their mind, to be able to communicate with them, because you can't make assumptions that they're living in 2020 when they may very well be living in 1964 or 54 or whatever. Again, slowly and clearly, taking the time and being aware that it may take them some time to answer your questions. And we're a little ahead, so that's a good thing. Again, the 5 key messages: dementia is not a normal part of aging. It's caused by a disease. It's not just about memory. You know, people have asked the question, as I did when I first came, you know, how do you die from dementia? And it's because the brain changes so much that it starts to shut down basic parts of your organs and things of that nature. So Alzheimer's has much more effect on the brain than just, you know, I can't remember what I had for lunch. So it does, whether it's mobility issues, mood, behavior, everything we've talked about, it's much more than memory. But it is possible to have a good quality of life with dementia. You know, there's a lot of programs out there, whether they're online or in person, where whatever we can find to tap into for any particular individual, that is what we need to do, whether they enjoy doing artwork or music is huge. For people with dementia, it has a profound effect. I've seen people that can't carry on a conversation, but when you start playing music, they know every single word in that song, and it comes back from years ago, and it just changes them. It's really, it's quite endearing, actually. So they can have a good quality of life. It's just going to be a different life than maybe what you would envision or they would envision or what you would like to have for them. But you just have to find what still moves them and what emotions they're still capable of. And there, again, just like that, there's more to the person than the dementia. They're special people that are dealing with this disease and not only supporting the person with dementia, but supporting their care partner as well, because you can imagine that's a 24/7 duty. I guess I hate to say that because a lot of them don't see it that way, but it's a 24/7 commitment, I would say. And there's, I don't know if you've heard the term ambiguous loss. But what that term basically means is these caregivers are going through ambiguous loss because they're losing their loved one, but they have not passed away. So they can't grieve the loss like we would when somebody in our family passes away, but every day, every month turns into more losses. You know, I went through that with my dad, just as a note. He had Lou Gehrig's disease. So every change in him and every loss of his ability became a loss, a grief, a kind of grief for me. So you have to understand that as we support the people with dementia, we also need to support their care partners. So turning your yeah.
Sorry, there's just a quick question. If you would touch on the concept of sundowning.
Oh, okay. Sundowning is what they term when somebody with dementia, Alzheimer's, towards the end of the day, their behavior becomes worse. They become more agitated, maybe more aggressive. And what they say, or what I've read, the experts, is because there's so much stimulus during the day that by the afternoon, it changes their behavior and their tone, and their anxiety level may be higher. So you may have caregivers say, well, he was fine in the morning, but by 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock, he's agitated, he's anxious, he's more depressed. And that's what's sundown when the sun goes down later in the day, the behavior changes. And what I've read is they attribute that to is there's so much stimulus during the day that somebody with dementia just can't process all of that. And it just makes them anxious. And so I hope I've answered that question. If anybody has anything they want to add to that, certainly put that in the chat, and Bob will read that. So like I say, I'm not a medical expert. So what we would want from Dementia Friends is there's no homework, there's no mandatory, you have to go out and get 20 signatures or whatever. Get in touch and stay in touch with someone with dementia. Be patient, be more understanding. You've come to the session today, you're all going to be Dementia Friends, you'll get your certificate, and as soon as Sally gets that ready for us. And if there's another personal action, you know, I'll visit my mother with dementia more often, or I'll be more understanding, or I'll be more patient, whatever it is. Just take what we've gone through today and or become a dementia champion, and then you can do these quick 1 hour. And I will tell you, all the script is right here. You don't have to memorize anything. It's all written out, and so it's very easy to do. And that way we can kind of spread it into the community instead of just me. There's another, Shelley at one of the banks is also doing some of these presentations. There's probably over 4,000 or more Dementia Friends, people that have been trained in Arizona thus far. And that's just from the Tempe, started with just the Tempe movement. So as more cities get involved, more people will get involved as well. Resources, Alzheimer's Association, of course. Area Agency on Aging does have some assistance as far as programs and respite care for the caregivers. And I can send you these slides if anybody wants them. Just let Sally know and we can send that out if you don't know these resources. Maricopa County is the Area Agency on Aging, but every county has an area agency. So if you happen to be in another county, they also have an area agency in those counties that have the same programs. The Alzheimer's Association, of course, that's nationwide, and then there's chapters within Arizona as well. Banner, Alzheimer's Institute, they also have other classes if you want to learn more about behaviors and caregiving. They have a lot of classes listed on their website, banneralz.org. And then they do have Dementia Friends sessions if you want to go through that. Dementia Friends USA is the national organization that sends out and says what the criteria is to become a dementia friendly community, Dementia Friendly America as well. And if you want sessions, you can contact either myself or Janice Greeno at Banner Health. She also does Dementia Friends sessions. You know, we can do sessions for 5 people, for 50 people. If you have, I've had some folks at some of the 55 plus parks or churches. We've done, hopefully get some training in some churches. Banks, you know, anybody that comes in contact with anybody really, because Circle K's, you know, people with dementia, I can say they're everywhere, but they do frequent the mall. They frequent, and the more people that understand, you know, we've had incidents where people have become disoriented and gone into a Circle K asking for directions. And if they would recognize that, oh, maybe this person has dementia and maybe I need to call the authorities because I don't want them wandering around the city, instead of just saying, yeah, it's that way, or, you know, get out of here, you're on drugs kind of thing. And I'm not saying that Circle K does that, but we need to understand, you know, the signs and the symptoms that we've talked about. Banner also has a newsletter that you can sign up for that has great information about Alzheimer's, and I said their classes and all of that. So I want to thank you. Let me stop the share and get back to everybody. Oh, look at all that chat. My goodness. Okay, hopefully somebody's capturing all of that because I have no idea how to do that, Bob.
Yeah, no, we're good. We got it recorded. So
Okay.
for those of you that registered today, we will go ahead and send you a copy of the presentation if you would like. Feel free to send an email over to Sally Harrison, sharrison@mesachamber.org, and she will be happy to get you copied on that. We will also have a copy of the chat, so we'll go through the chat. If there's a question that did not get answered in the chat, we'll go ahead and have Karen just kind of address that, and we'll include that in a follow-up email. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Karen, thank you so much for facilitating this course today.
Oh, you're welcome. And I see there's a lot of information in the chat. Somebody's got a book coming out, and I know Susan Wallers, and I knew her husband when he was going to Oakwood, and that and she's a godsend to other caregivers because she has some great information about, you know, what she went. They were younger, 40s, and you know it's very different than dealing with the older adult, because she had some challenges because they were such a younger couple, and actually the daughter works for Oakwood as well. So, and there's phone numbers and all sorts of things on there. So capture, I don't know, Bob, if
Yeah,
everybody.
we'll actually capture the chat, and we can make that available as well. This recording will get edited and posted to the Mesa Chamber YouTube page, so you'll be able to watch that or share it later on once it's posted. Otherwise, we're at 10:01, so I'll go ahead and let everybody get back to their day. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.